We are going to start a new sculpture, and this is a sculpture I will be working on. It is from Postspace, and the model name is Adhira, and it's Adhira 222. Really good model. She is a little bit bigger as far as body, so she's got like plenty of fat, which is not a bad thing. But what happens a lot of times with models that have a little bit, they're more on the Rubenesque side, is that it's a little bit more difficult to see the anatomy when they are a little bit on the plus side. And I do tend to prefer models that are a little bit more muscular. So I'm using Postspace right now, and you can see it's just her on a platform, and beautiful face, beautiful figure, but it's going to be a very difficult pose because when you take this in consideration, this negative space here, and this is the same way I would even sculpt like a horse or something, because it's going to be on all fours. So you cannot really leave in water-based clay without an armature this space, a negative shape in here for so long, because there's so much mass here that it'll kind of crawl and perhaps even break. So you need to kind of put something here, at least temporary, until this dries out a little bit. But we are going to get started on this. You definitely should look around the pose and just try and determine the dimensions. And of course I've downloaded this, so I have it on my pose software, and this is the online version that you can download. This is definitely going to be a little bit of a challenge. Let me show you what I'm using. So this is my platform. It's rather large and it's a little dirty with water-based clay. It's basically wood. I can grab it from here. It's very easy to grab. That's the way I tend to do it. I'm not exactly sure the size yet. I might make it fairly large. It really depends how much clay I have. I don't know if I have enough clay. But this is a wooden board with a piece of plastic on top. You should clean it all out, but because it's water-based clay, one of the things I tend to do is spray it down, and it'll just get nice and wet, and then I can add my new clay on top. So it's quite a bit of a difference from the Bernie meme sculpture to this, but I think this will be kind of a fun sculpture to do. And Postspace.com, you can get all of these models, and it's very inexpensive. You know, usually when I use a model, a live model, so if you were to hire a live model by yourself, it would be like $20 an hour. In a group, it might be like $8 to $10 for 3 hours. It really depends, but online you can get this set for $4 or whatever, so it's definitely much more inexpensive than using a model. And you know, models these days, they're going online too, so this is a very good way of getting a pose that you can work on it, because in sculpture it takes so long to really work. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is put this way. You kind of have to determine where the heads are going to be. So if I sculpt it this way, I'm actually going to start it this way. I'm going to put it on the profile like this. So that's going to be my profile. And here we need to kind of determine what the base is. So we're going to add a nice flat sheet of clay, and that's going to be our base. For this, we're going to use water-based clay. I have a fresh bag of clay, and most likely for this sculpture, we're going to use 2 bags of clay. So as you know, with water-based clay, you have to hollow out the inside, and you could build it with like some sort of like paper inside, but I tend to like build it solid. Take your wire tool and let's cut a 1-inch slab. And the reason we're going to cut the 1-inch slab is because this is going to be our base. We're going to put it on the platform. So there we go. Where we want our sculpture to rest, and I'm just going to push it down really quick. Now we're going to make another one and overlap it here. This part, one of the things that I find is that you have to make sure that this is really wet here. And what I'll do, I'll take this to score it. You know, even though this clay is wet, I will make sure that it is just absolutely as wet as possible, because what happens here is that as it dries, that joint becomes separated, and that could be a part where the clay breaks over time as it dries. So I'm going to take another 1-inch slab. And what I'm going to do is just take this really quick. Just kind of do this. This kind of roughens up the surface. And then what I'll do is I'll put it down like this, and I'll push it in, and I'll try and join this by pushing in the clay quite a bit. You can see I overlapped it because I want to kind of be able to push it, these two, and I'm pushing them together because I want them to join. The thing with this is that you could always remove, but it'll be a little bit harder to add. I'll take some water. The water kind of helps almost cement it together. And I overlap it like this, and I push it down. And you have to kind of push it quite a bit. So take both your hands, push it in. That's why you make it a little bit wider, because you do lose a little bit. So now let's do the same thing for here. Just kind of rough it up and then rough this part up. And then let's cut this like that. And now let's wet this part and this part. This is a lot just to do for a base, but you're better off doing this well in the beginning than struggling and then have it crack later. So take your hands, kind of push it in, merge it onto this one. And we're still not done, because we want to be able to kind of push all of this together. This is going to be quite a large sculpture. So I'm pushing it together on both sides. And now this piece that I have left over, I'm just going to add it to here. And I can take this. As you've seen in my other videos, it takes quite a bit to build a platform, but you know, it goes by pretty quickly if you use a fresh bag of clay. I'm removing quite a bit of clay. We want it to be nice and even. All right, so this is the thigh. I cut a block, and I am just going to put it this way. This is going to be my connector for the hips, because I just wanted support, otherwise it's just too floppy. So if you look at the back here, we're going to take another piece. That's going to be my thigh right here. I'm just going to cut it a little bit. And I'm just going to cut this. Here we go. So we're going to connect this to the lower leg. And then this is just going to rest. So this is going to be, we're just trying to build this as quickly as possible, but you can kind of see what's going on. So that is the thighs. The thighs are going to get much bigger. This is going to be a little bit different than what I'm used to like building in the beginning. Keep moving your model around. I'm just looking at the right side. So also she's angled back like this, so her thigh is coming forward. We'll just add a little bit more here. Once we add the arms, it's going to definitely help support the body. So this is just here to support. We're gonna add the arm right about here. So let's cut this. And we're gonna put it right about here. That's gonna be the arm. And we're gonna take this. We're just gonna connect the shoulder to the torso. All right, we're just gonna connect this really quick. This is very thin. So if you're looking at the side here, you're starting to see what's happening. So, but we need to build up all of this clay. We also need to make sure that it overnight it dries just a little bit. But you have to make sure that all this clay you push together. So I'm just going to continue building the armature, and this is going to dry overnight, and then we're going to have a decent base to continue. And it's getting harder, which is good. So I had to shrink down the legs. I brought them back a little bit. The torso was getting a little bit too big. I can still correct that. If I wanted to have the same length, I could have just made this bigger and just stretched it out. But this saves me a little bit of clay. The other thing to note is that this arm is actually coming out quite a bit. If you look at it from the front, she has her arm, her humerus going this way. That means that it's going to be coming down like this, and it's becoming harder to move, but you can still do it. That means that this part is going to be a little bit further down, and it helps to have a very large tool so you can make very broad strokes. That way you don't get carried away with details. The reason this is here is because I need to support this, otherwise it'll just collapse overnight because it's very, very small. You know, our head's going to get bigger, hopefully. This arm, one of the things I'm doing is I'm putting the arm just a little bit too forward like this. So I'm just going to kind of push it out. That means that every single thing is going to be moved. But you have to be very careful. I've been like sculpting this, and this part I've noticed I have put some air bubbles in here which could potentially break during the firing process. So keep that in mind. So this shoulder is actually kind of coming this way. So she is twisting her torso this way. So I can even move this entire arm this way. But that means that the arm and everything needs to be moved. So at this point, I'm just trying to establish the major shapes. Here's the shoulder. And I'm thinking, this is something I tend to use for things that could potentially fall. So I'm going to build the neck and the head, but I want to put it on this skewer. And then I'll just kind of wrap it around like this. And that way, the head's not going to fall off, and I can build it pretty tightly, and I can remove it afterwards. Remember, we're going to scoop the insides out as much as we can towards the end. Is a very difficult pose. So one of the things I'm struggling is with the measurement from here to here. At first, it was a little bit too long, but now I realize it should be the same size as I originally had it. There's something wrong with the shoulder, and I need to make the torso thinner. But for right now, I have this here to help support a little bit of the weight. I also have this here to support a little bit of the weight because there is so much happening here. And also keep in mind with water-based clay, the legs, the arms are going to be drying out much faster. So this is definitely not a pose for beginners, but it is a very challenging pose, but I think I'll be able to pull it off. So one of the things that I need to do for the next session is look at the sculpture and try to take a measurement, say from here to here, and compare it from here, which is the the condyle of the femur, right about here, to the patella, which is the kneecap. So we're taking the measurement of the femur, comparing it to here, take a measurement, say from here to the bottom, compare it from here to here, and that way you get an accurate measurement. But right now it just looks a little bit too short. There's something definitely wrong with this shoulder girdle. The trapezius is not there. But this is essentially the gesture for today's sculpture. It's a very difficult one, but at least we are going our way. I'm probably going to exaggerate this curve as well, make it a little bit more sensual, but for right now, you're going to struggle with the clay kind of sinking down, and you're constantly going to be pushing this up. Take a measurement with your stick here and compare it to the head. The head is actually lower than here, so always kind of take a measurement across and see. And with post pace, it's very easy to find your way, but try to figure out where the bones are. The bones are definitely more important than the muscles. So this is where the hips are, and then this would be the rib cage, and then you have the shoulder girdle, and it's very difficult to kind of get it right. Also, I'm going to have to bring down the neck. The neck is going to be a little bit further down. So there's all of these things that are happening. I'm probably going to have to remove the arms as well and kind of push them forward a little bit because they look to be just a little bit further back. And then, of course, we're going to take measurements of the head. So there's quite a bit of things to do. One of the things I've noticed with this sculpture is that as I am building the clay, I'm finding air bubbles inside. That is clay I didn't put on right with enough force. And I think it has to do with the way the position is. It's hard to kind of develop the push in the clay without affecting a lot because it's a very sensitive sort of pose. It requires you to be very careful, otherwise it could collapse. But you need to position quite a bit of clay here just to kind of hold it up overnight. Even with this, if I was to remove the stick from the head, it would fall off because I don't have enough clay in the neck yet. This is definitely going to be a very challenging pose, and tomorrow I'll continue building it, and hopefully we're going to have a good sculpture from this.